Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel Horak. I'm Vice President of Sustainable Braintree, and tonight's webinar will be a virtual dock tour of Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. Let's start by talking a little bit about Sustainable Braintree. So Sustainable Braintree, there's our name of our guest speaker. We're gracious to have him tonight. Sustainable Braintree is a local nonprofit 501c3. Our website is www.sustainablebraintree.org. We do encourage everybody here tonight to connect with us on social media. We have the three big social media accounts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So do follow us on social media. And we also submit a monthly newsletter. So do look for that in your email with all sorts of news and events. We have a website that we're going to put into the chat in a minute to become a Sustainable Braintree member, because memberships support events like this and local advocacy efforts by Sustainable Braintree. It's only $15 for individuals and $30 for families for a yearly membership to support all of our efforts. Let me read to you our mission statement. Sustainable Braintree is a community advocacy group committed to helping Braintree residents, community groups, businesses, and local government conserve energy, promote clean and renewable energy, protect and restore the environment, and live a sustainable, healthy lifestyle. We have 5 focus areas: energy and climate, water conservation and protection, waste reduction, recycling, community gardening, and conservation and protection of natural areas. So we do have a community garden here in Braintree that we support. If you're interested in helping us out, we're looking for volunteers to be a liaison to South Shore, to Sustainable South Shore. So there's an email address, info@Sustainable Braintree is how you reach us if you want to become, if you want to be a volunteer with us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our speaker, Paul. Thank you so much for being here today. And the order for today is that Paul will give us a talk, and it includes some fascinating videos. And when you have questions, go ahead and contribute your questions into the chat box, and we'll take all of the questions at the end. Okay, Paul, come on up.
Share screen? Yeah. There, whoops. Well, hello there, everyone. Rachel, can you hear me?
Coming through great, and your screen share looks perfect.
Great, okay. Well, welcome, folks in Braintree. I'm located on Cape Cod in Falmouth, which is, Woods Hole is part of Falmouth, by the way. Falmouth is Woods Hole is a village in the town of Falmouth. So just to give you some idea of Woods Hole and what we're all about, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, I'll be calling it WHOI for short, but by the way, I'm the guy in the white hat, just for reference sakes. Woods Hole Oceanographic was founded in 1930 as an independent nonprofit organization with a grant by the Rockefeller Foundation for $2.5 million in 1930, which in today's money is around 40 million. So it was a good deal of money then, the $2.5 million. It certainly is a good deal of money now. And it really sustained us for our first 10 years of operation. We ended up constructing a few buildings here in Woods Hole and also purchasing a sailing vessel. During the war years, the 1940s, we were charged with developing anti-fouling paint, explosives, and sonar, our initial research with sonar. Thankfully for the war effort, quite frankly, by 1940, we were running out of money. That $2.5 million from the Rockefeller Foundation was pretty well depleted. So with the war effort, we were infused with money from the US government, obviously from the United States Navy in particular. And today our current funding is US government, the United States Navy, NASA, grants and foundations, and private donations. Today's budget is around $230 million a year, and we employ almost 1,000 employees full-time, making us the second largest employer on Cape Cod next to the hospital system. We're affiliated with MIT. We provide doctorate and postdoctorate degrees through that institution. And our research areas are primarily oceans, earth sciences, and marine policy. We have 2 global class vessels. One is called the Neil Armstrong, which is our newest vessel, and the Atlantis, and a very small coastal vessel called the Tioga. We have multiple underwater vehicles such as the Alvin, the Jason, Sentry, and Remus technology. And that should advance my slide, and it's not, so we're going to find out why. Hold on, let's see what's happening here. Okay, there we go. There we go. Rachel, can
The
you hear that?
oceans, the atmosphere, the interior of the earth,
This
life,
is good.
everything is connected.
Okay, great.
We are all linked in our research by our passion for the ocean.
WHOI is an amazing place full of extraordinary people who are truly curious about the ocean, want to understand how it works.
How it interacts with the rest of the planetary systems, how humans influence it.
The physics, the geology, the chemistry, the biology, the interaction with human society, it's all connected.
What WHOI does is it brings all those scientists together.
The world's best talent in ocean sciences.
We learn from each other, we develop opportunities together.
It's a force multiplier. It feels like 130,000 scientists.
I can pull together a team from either my department or other departments at WHOI to really tackle any problem.
Having all the support is what makes WHOI unique and enables me to do good science.
WHOI is at the cutting edge of that mix between science and engineering, and it allows us to ask questions that most other places can't ask.
You can come up with ideas, put them into action, and actually deliver results, all in a short time frame. Vehicle technology, AUV technology, seafloor instrumentation, sensor development.
You've got the world-class reputation, but you've also got amazing ships and engineering that allow you access to places that most other scientists can't get to.
You can see further, you can go further, you can reduce your risk, and you can do it less expensively.
It's really amazing for me to be able to walk out of my lab, cross the street, and get on to the research vessel that can take me anywhere around the world.
Here we have an overview of Woods Hole itself. You can see our 2 ocean class vessels at the dock area, down in this area in here. This is the dock area of WHOI. In this area is Marine Biological Laboratories. Marine Biological Laboratories were founded in 1888. They employ about 300 people. They're affiliated with the University of Chicago, and they will also grant doctorate and postdoctorate degrees. This facility right here is the NOAA facility, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Fisheries Division. And this particular facility was founded in 1871. We also have in Woods Hole, we have an aquarium, which is funded by the US government, which is a great little aquarium. It's small, it's open to everyone, and there's no charge, which is the best part of visiting the Woods Hole aquarium. The area that we're looking at was first explored by Bartholomew Gosnold in 1602. This area up here is called, get my cursor, was that cursor? This is Penzance Point, which will come into play, and I'll speak a little bit about Penzance Point and the significance of Penzance Point to the Woods Hole area. Most of our facilities are located in an area called the Quissit Campus. When I spoke of the Woods Hole Village, it's down here. This is where the dock area where the ships are. Up about a quarter of a mile, 2.5 miles actually, up the street is the Quissit Campus. And this is the area that houses offices, laboratories, conference rooms, marine chemistry, geophysics, and oceanography all takes place at the Quissit Campus. There's also a large warehouse of seafloor samples going back 50 or 60 years, a data library and other related services, and also the U.S. Geological Service has an office on this site as well. I'm taking you back to Woods Hole Village, and the picture on the left-hand side of the screen is called the Candle House, and it's the oldest building in Woods Hole Village. It was erected in 1832, And it primarily was designed to process whale oil. Basically, what you would do is you'd have whaling ships go out, bring back strips of blubber, they'd boil it, and the blubber was boiled down, and the byproduct was used for lubrication for industries. Lamp oil, obviously, in this particular building was processed here. And interestingly enough, there were 9 whaling vessels in Woods Hole. And we tend to think of New Bedford and Nantucket being the whaling capitals of the world, and they certainly were. But from 1815 to 1860, the 9 whaling vessels here in Woods Hole sailed the South Sea Islands, sailed off the coast, bringing back the whale oil. This industry prospered in Woods Hole until oil was discovered in Pennsylvania, and the entire whaling industry totally collapsed. But the interesting thing is that we had those 9 whaling vessels, and the captains of those whaling vessels needed something to do to still make money and keep their crews going. And they ended up founding a company called the Pacific Guano Company. And what's fascinating about the guano industry in Woods Hole is that they would take the whaling vessels, the 9 whaling vessels that were stationed at Woods Hole, they would send them to the South Sea Islands, and they would scrape guano off the rocks off the coast in Peru. Now, these guano base is bird poop, by the way. It would go to 200 or 300 feet deep, and they would scrape the guano off the rocks, fill their hulls with guano, bring it back to Woods Hole. They'd mix it with fish waste from the fishing industry here in the Cape. They would grind it up and make natural fertilizer. Now, you can just imagine what this industry smelled like with bird poop and fish waste being ground up in the middle of summer, and it's 80 degrees and high humidity. The aroma of Woods Hole at this point in time must have been unbearable. But they did have the Pacific Guano Company, and it prospered. And it was a good way to use those whaling vessels that no longer had any significance because whaling was not happening any longer. So basically, Woods Hole area went from fishing to processing whale oil to guano production to obviously what we are now, a huge area with thousands of scientists working year-round in our different occupations. I'd like to spend a few minutes now talking about some of the technology at Woods Hole, at WHOI. And one of the technologies are REMUSs, which stands for Remote Controlled Environmental Monitoring Units. And they're pretty fascinating. Excuse me, let's go back here. Uh-oh, hold on. I hit it. Folks, I'm sorry, but I hit end instead of where I want to be right now. So we're going to get back. Okay, move a couple more slides. Okay. Hold on, folks. So what happens when I hit the wrong button? Okay, we're going to get you back. Okay, sorry. It's okay. Thank you for your patience, by the way. I go back to this. No, back. A little bit more. More. Right there. Oh, one more. Go forward now. All right, now we're going to try it again, folks. Thank you for your patience. All right, those are REMUSs, folks. That's what I hit the wrong button. Hit end instead of continue. These are REMUSs, Remote Controlled Environmental Monitoring Units. They were developed 22 years ago. They're now commercialized and produced by many companies around the world, but they were originally developed here at Woods Hole by their own technology and our own science team. The REMUS on the bottom of the screen is called the REMUS 100. The one on the top of the screen is called the REMUS 6000. They are basically low-cost, autonomous underwater vehicles. They were used extensively by the U.S. Navy for covert operations, and they're still used by the U.S. Navy for covert operations. They can survey the ocean floor. They use propellers and fins controlled by a laptop on board the vessel. And the remises, again, range in different sizes, and they go down to at least 3.7 to 4.4 miles. Sonar, 700 meters of the ocean floor at 2,300 feet. So that's remises, and they're pretty fascinating. They can do fun things, they can do serious things. We want to take a look at both fun things and serious things with the remis technology developed at Woods Hole. Here we have a tunnel inspection vehicle. I want you to think of, well, I guess for us, we could probably think of the water system to the city of Boston and maybe Braintree too. I'm not really sure, the Metropolitan Water Commission, but you folks are getting your water supply most likely from the Quabbin Reservoir, which is out on the other side of central Massachusetts. And these huge tunnels are bringing fresh water through large aqueducts into the city of Boston. Well, there's a similar tunnel configuration in New York City. It's a 45-mile section of the Delaware Aqueduct, which supplies New York City and the boroughs with all of its fresh water. They were leaking. The tunnels were leaking. Now, there's a couple of ways to fix that. One, you can send a diver down and send that diver down swimming through 45 miles. You'll never see the diver again. However, remis technology and technology developed at Woods Hole Oceanographic produced a remis which would go down the tunnel, program it to go down into the tunnel, and it would take 186,000 still images containing the exact position to facilitate location of the leaks. So the end result is we also currently build tunnel inspection vehicles to use to check water supplies and oil supplies and things of that nature. Now, that's a serious thing. Let's look at something that's not quite as serious, although it's a lot of fun. It's called the Shark Cam. The Discovery Channel approached Woods Hole Oceanographic 4 or 5 years ago, asking us if we could develop a remis that could actually chase a shark through the ocean, film it, look at its habitat, and the end result was that we developed what we call the Shark Cam. Now, remember, I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation that we are a nonprofit organization. So certainly when the Discovery Channel came to us and said, can you develop this for us? We certainly said, we will definitely do it. And I'm sure we had a nice price tag associated with it. It's a torpedo shaped with special system for filming shark. GoPro camera, GPS, Wi-Fi antenna. Let's see this Shark Cam in action. Here's the actual Shark Cam itself. By the way, the Shark Cam survived the shark bite. In fact, the shark determined it wasn't a very tasty seal and determined that it wasn't really that interested in it once it took a chunk out of it, and it just swam off. You can see the GoPro camera, by the way, is in the yellow circle, and to the back of the remis, you can see some of the gouge marks that were attributed to the shark teeth. If you ever do come to Woods Hole, and again, we're open to the public pretty much year round, and you can actually see in our Discovery Center the actual Shark Cam itself. The Shark Cam, by the way, was not damaged. It bobbed back up to the surface again, and so much for that. And certainly to say we also have a turtle cam, by the way, besides the Shark Cam. Now, that's sort of a fun thing you can do with the remis thing. We also can use more serious thing, and let's speak to locating Air France 447. We have Air France 447 flying from Rio de Janeiro to Paris, France. It crashed in 2009 and was located in 2011. And the French government tried unsuccessfully almost 2 years to locate the aircraft. Clearly, they wanted the black box of the aircraft to determine why it fell into the South Atlantic. It was down around 15,000 feet, and unfortunately, there are 228 persons perished on the aircraft. We sent down the Remus 6000 to see if we could locate it, and we did locate it. And here were the photos that the Remus took of the Air France landing gear, part of the engine, part of the fuselage of the Air France aircraft. The U.S. Navy then sent down what they call the Ramona 6000, which is another remote operational vehicle, another ROV. It actually located it, brought the black box back into the surface. The French government opened the black box up, and they did indeed determine why the aircraft crashed. It crashed primarily because the pilot tubes were obstructed with ice crystals, and it disconnected the autopilot. But that was determined after the black box was brought up to the surface, and obviously the French government, and they did change the configuration of the Airbus as a result. So that's Remus technology. Another example, the Holy Grail of shipwrecks. This has been in the news recently. Let's watch the video.
Well, 3 years ago, the Holy Grail of shipwrecks was discovered in the Caribbean Sea, and tonight we know Massachusetts researchers played a key part in finding it. The San Jose sunk in 1708 during a battle with the British ships in the War of the Spanish Succession. For hundreds of years, its exact location was unknown. In 2015, researchers called on the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute and their underwater autonomous vehicle to help find the ship, and it did. Well, get this, the ship was believed to be carrying a treasure of gold, silver, and emeralds worth $17 billion. The treasure has been the subject of legal battles between several nations and private companies and is still sitting there at the site of the wreck.
We knew we found the San Jose primarily because of the distinctive dolphins that were on the cannons of the San Jose. To this date, it still sits in the bottom of the ocean, still in the courts to who can have salvage rights to this particular vessel. Now, we all know about finding the Titanic. It's associated clearly with Woods Hole and finding the Titanic, obviously one of the most famous ships in the world. That was a British luxury liner. It was sailing from Southampton to New York City in 1912. April of 14 to 15 of 1912, hit the iceberg and sunk. We know the story. We know it killed around 1,500 passengers and crew. Woods Hole played an important part in finding the Titanic. Here we have a picture of Robert Ballard. Now, this picture of Ballard is many, many years old. Ballard is now in his late 70s. He is a professor emeritus at the University of Rhode Island, but he was involved in the search for the Titanic. And again, it was discovered in 1985 by Bob Ballard, 2 miles below the surface. I have some original Titanic video taken by Bob Ballard. So you certainly have some idea of the initial discovery of the Titanic. What's interesting about this Titanic, here you see a photograph of the Titanic. I want you to think, when this ship was first launched, it was really one of the largest ships in the world. If you compare it to an ocean liner today, the Royal Caribbean, or Symphony of the Seas, I believe is the name of it, it is 5 times, think about that, 5 times the size of the Titanic. However, keep in mind that Bob Ballard was a scientist who was working at Woods Hole, but he really had another role too. He worked at Woods Hole as a scientist, but he was also a naval officer. And he had a secret mission in 1985 to find 2 submarines, to find the Thresher and the Scorpion, which sank in 1963 and 1968. And the Navy wanted to determine if these 2 nuclear submarines were leaking radiation, and also we could photograph the actual crushed hulls. One was off the coast of Spain, the other off the coast of Newfoundland. So he wanted to really get some idea of what they look like, and the Navy sent him out on this secret mission. The world thought he was out looking for the Titanic, and to some extent he was. He found the 2 submarines, and here's a picture of the Scorpion and the Thresher. He found them, determined they were not leaking radiation, and the end result is he went off looking for the Titanic. And he had 2 weeks to find the Titanic. He found the Titanic. He announced to the world that he found the Titanic, and nothing was ever mentioned about finding the 2 submarines. And again, no one knew this until 4 years ago, when the government declassified finding the 2 submarines. And then the world knew that Bob Ballard was really looking for the submarines. And then he'd go, if you will, I'd use the term loosely, but he went out to play and find the Titanic, and he did. But his real mission was to find the 2 submarines. So an interesting side of finding the submarines. We also have one vehicle that is a manned vehicle. It's our only manned vehicle. It is made over 5,000 dives in its 50-year history. The original Alvin does not look like the Alvin today. It is constantly upgraded every few years. It is our nation's only deep diving research submarine that carries human occupants. It carries 1 pilot and 2 scientists. Here you see the Alvin launched off the back of the Atlantis, which is its mothership. It was first launched in 1964. The original cost was $498,000, and interestingly enough, it was built by General Mills. Now, we think of General Mills, and I think they make cereal, but apparently in 1984 they were making other things too, because they were the original manufacturers of the Alvin. And it weighs about 45,000 pounds, and the original Alvin could dive to around 15,000 feet. Let's take a look at the Alvin.
One of the best experiences that you have as a pilot is when you become the ambassador, so to speak, for scientists who have waited years to have an opportunity to dive in the submarine. To watch them get into the submarine in the morning prior to the dive, and you can see the excitement.
I am so excited. I still can't believe it. I still totally can't believe it.
Have a great day.
I've done a lot of scuba diving, and I've never gotten to go deeper than 120, 130 feet. So to be able to have the chance to go down to over 1,400 meters under the ocean is just, I can't believe it. It's going to be incredible.
And then to turn the lights on and see the transformation when it all becomes real to them. And you can see it. You can actually see a physical change to their demeanor because they're finally there and they're experiencing things that most people don't ever have a chance to see with their own eyes.
So here's the Alvin again, but I do want to mention to you that one of your organizers at Sustainable Braintree, Rachel, has been in the Alvin, and I'm sure she could give you some very interesting stories about being in this particular Alvin. I don't know what year, Rachel, you were down in the Alvin, but it must have been a truly exciting experience to be involved and down to the bottom of the ocean in the Alvin capsule. One way or the other, here's the cutaway of the Alvin. Here is the sphere that holds the occupants. It's made of titanium, which is very, very strong metal. Interestingly enough, the Alvin, it's about 12,000 pounds of pressure per square inch if you're inside this, which obviously means you can't be on the exterior of it. This is synthetic foam, which is buoyancy foam in the back, lithium-ion batteries. You're getting to the top there's a hatch on the top, and you drop into the capsule. There's manipulator arms in front, which means you can pick up things off the ocean floor, bring them back up again to the surface. Really incredible piece of equipment. The new Alvin, which is ready to be launched again in several days, can really explore around 98% of the ocean floor, up to about 4 miles down. And upgrades are made periodically to the Alvin capsule. Every few years, it's totally taken apart, stripped down to its frame in maintenance, and brought back again and brought back to the surface again. Here we have a picture of an old photo inside but it's really tight inside. I'm sure Rachel could give you what it's like to be inside that inside this for several hours. Obviously, pretty tight, confined environment. Here you see the Alvin being disassembled, and every 4 to 5 years, the U.S. Navy requires it to be totally taken apart, stripped down to its metal frame, put back together again, and then recertified for its seaworthiness, if you will. The new Alvin, which again is ready to be launched in July of this year, relaunched. New titanium ballast, higher horsepower thrusters, additional manipulator arms, improved high quality still and video systems. And it'll be able to dive to 21,000 feet compared to the first one, which is about 14,000 feet. So quite a deal with upgrades in terms of the Alvin, but a really fascinating piece of equipment. And again, it's the only one in the United States. Now, other things that the Alvin has discovered with the help of Bob Ballard are hydrothermal vents. And let's explore these. So the interesting thing about how hydrothermal vents, before I speak to the Jason, is that prior to the discovery in 1977, by the way, discovered by Robert Ballard, the same gentleman who found the Titanic in the Alvin, was that everyone thought that life could not exist without photosynthesis, without light from the sun. But clearly, looking at those videos, I mean, you're down really in deep waters with that water heated by the heat magma in excess of 600 degrees Fahrenheit. Thinking about that was really an amazing discovery, with it teeming with sea life at the bottom of the ocean. Just incredible things. Here we have the ROV Jason. It's a remote vehicle. One of the vehicles used to explore hydrothermal vents is one of the Jasons. It's basically two remotely separate. They separate. The top, the yellow and blue part, separates from the bottom part. Again, manipulate arms in the front. It's not a manned vehicle. It can down around 6 miles, which is around 23,000 feet. It's powered by reinforced fiber optic cable, and it delivers electric power and communication from the ship to the vehicle. It's equipped with sonar and video, manipulator rounds for finding things on the ocean floor, bringing them back up again. And the Jason is used for hundreds and hundreds of dives to hydrothermal vents in the Pacific, in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. So that's the Jason, another vehicle from Woods Hole, if you will. I'm going to turn our attention to another item which has a connection to Woods Hole and has a rather sad ending, but let me just talk about it for a minute. It's called the Deep Sea Challenger. Now, the Deep Sea Challenger was sort of a item that was really has been around for 1960. Let me give you an example. 1960, we have the Bayaskaf Trias. It weighed 150 tons. It was two scientists. Was purchased for the U.S. Navy, by the way, in 1958 for $250,000. Was built in Trias, Yugoslavia. Just the name of it was Trias. In 1960, it descended to the deepest part of the ocean, the Challenger Deep, in the Mariana Trench off Guam in the Pacific. The problem was that it was very heavy. It could only stay down for a very, very short period of time. It was powered by gasoline and fuel of some kind. It took 5 hours to descend, spent about 20 minutes on the sea floor and unable to take photos, and that was pretty much the end of it. In 2012, the Deep Sea Challenger was built by James Cameron. Now, James Cameron produced the Titanic and Avatar. He used $40 million of his own money to build the item, the green item, which looks like a big cylinder here. It was built in California and Australia, and it can spend 3 or 4 hours on the ocean floor. It is a one-man vehicle, one person only. Excuse me. Here's the Deep Sea Challenger, a cutaway of it, going down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the Challenger Deep, if you will, right here. He gifted it to WHOI. And here's the Deep Sea Challenger on the WHOI dock in Woods Hole. And after completing his record-breaking dive, Cameron gifted it to WHOI. Cameron, in the middle of the photo, had over 20 years association with Woods Hole Oceanographic. And what basically he did, he gave us the Deep Sea Challenger to study it. We totally took it apart, stripped it right down to its steel frame again. He even sent his scientists and engineers who developed the Deep Sea Challenger Woods Hole to help the WHOI scientists determine why this had greater capacity than the Alvin, and totally disassembled. And several years after we received it, the Australian Museum wanted to display the Challenger on temporary loan. So we had it, we put it back, at this time it was put back together again. And we decided we would allow it to be sent to Australia, where they were building a museum, and they wanted to have the Challenger with them for 2 years. Remember now, it was built both in California and Australia, and Cameron thought that was a great idea, and we could share it with the Australians. Unfortunately, it never made it to Australia. En route to the ship, the vehicle was heavily damaged in an accident on Interstate 95 in Connecticut. The whole back end of it was really burnt up when the rear tires on the flatbed truck caught on fire. It was partially repaired, cosmetically only, is not functional, and is on display in the Australian National Museum in Australia. But that's the Deep Sea Challenger. Another item that we have in our battery of deep sea submersibles is called the Sentry, and it's involved in the search for the El Faro. Here's the Sentry again. It's an autonomous underwater vehicle, an AUV, sort of like the Remus. It can non-manned, obviously. It can explore about to 6,000 meters, or about almost 20,000 feet. It can take pictures of the seafloor, sea vents, ocean ridges, and it can be used in conjunction with the Alvin. But in this case, it was used for the search for the El Faro. Here is the El Faro. It's a cargo ship, and well, I'll let the video tell the story.
26 hours of everything said on the bridge of that ship until its devastating end would be recovered, preserved on a credit card-sized chip inside this voyage data recorder, or VDR, about the size of a basketball.
We actually came up with the needle in a haystack analogy. The size of a needle in the average haystack kind of matched up with the size of the El Faro debris field and wreckage, and the voyage data recorder is your needle.
Andy Bowen is a principal engineer at WHOI, the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. It was technology from WHOI's Deep Submergence Lab that would make all the difference.
In 1985, the discovery of the Titanic was a big part of what was done here in this lab. We've gone on from that point to do many different things, exploring the ocean.
The National Transportation Safety Board would require that expertise. It took them more than a month to find El Faro. The ship's emergency beacon had failed. Another major setback was during the sinking, the bridge of the ship split from the main body of the vessel. That wheelhouse was found, but a mast the VDR was attached to had broken off and was missing.
We were contacted with the idea that maybe we would be able to help them with what ultimately would be a much more extensive and detailed search.
A main tool for that search was the Sentry.
Sort of the equivalent of an underwater drone. It has onboard batteries, it has computers, and it has sensors, and we program it with a mission.
Bowen and Sentry arrived at the El Faro site nearly 7 months after the disaster, tasked with finding that needle in the haystack 3 miles down.
The seafloor is quite peaceful. On the other hand, a lot of the evidence that you're looking at speaks to the rather violent end of the ship. The ship, once it had flooded and left the surface, fell at a fairly high rate of speed. In particular, you could see the sort of impact craters, this sort of wash of sediment that has gone out many hundreds of feet. The impact actually broke the ship in half. You know, people perished within this debris, and you know, that's something that never leaves you.
Bowen says the importance of finding answers was felt by all, and those answers came when the mast they were searching for was spotted.
Within minutes of identifying the mast, it was possible to discern a very small little object hanging by a thread, and lo and behold, that turned out to be the VDR.
A mission the summer of 2016 to recover the VDR was also a success.
The retrieval of the voyage data recorder was so important, not only for those who lost loved ones, but also for the investigators to be able to draw the maximum amount of information. I have no doubt that that's going to play an important role in how future mariners go about their business.
Now here you have a picture of that VDR. Again, think about that. You're 3 miles down. You have the capacity with equipment from Woods Hole to pick up this VCR. Really, it's the size of a bread box. And the chip inside had the voice data of the captain of the El Faro explaining why he thought he could outrun the hurricane. Clearly, unfortunately, he didn't. 30 seamen were lost, the majority of them from Mass Maritime Academy in Bourne, the seamen that were lost. So again, a really tragic thing, but again, in fact, if you go online, you can actually listen to the actual voice of the captain speaking to someone on land that why he knows he can outrun the hurricane and make it. Unfortunately, of course, that did not happen. So again, a very interesting piece of equipment from Woods Hole Oceanographic. We also do a lot of work with buoys. Here we have a buoy, and I want you to think of not the kind of buoy that Well, let me just, I'll give you a prime example right now. Buoys like the one you're looking at, is very similar, are now located in Boston Harbor, out in the sea lanes. And they basically will pick up the sound acoustically of whales. And when they pick up the sound of whales, they will notify the ship captains of the location of the whales through WHOI buoys. And then the ship captains can avoid hitting the whales. So again, buoy technology right in Boston Harbor. Now, buoys took the place of those of us that are old enough to remember. I don't really remember them, but back in the early 50s, they were lightships. And here's the Nantucket lightship, which is one of the only surviving lightships left. At one point in time in before 1950, there were 179 lightships on both coastlines, the east and west coast, and they served as weather stations. They guided ships, they guided aircraft as late as the 1950s. In fact, this particular vessel, the Nantucket, is still on, it's not really on display, but if you drive down, I want to say I-95 going towards New Bedford, this is located in the harbor in New Bedford. And if you look off the highway off I-95, you can actually see the Nantucket piered, tied up at a pier in New Bedford. One way or the other, there are about 15 lightships currently in existence now. One of them, again, as I mentioned, New Bedford. None are still in use. Some are used as museums. But again, they were incredibly dangerous. They were manned by the U.S. Coast Guard, and they're out at sea and in hurricanes and violent storms. And again, they were used to weather stations, guide ships, very dangerous occupation. Buoys came along, such as what you see here. And buoys took the place of lightships. They switched to service and subsurface buoys. Lightships, again, are not cost effective. These are, you anchor them to the ocean floor. The data is transmitted back to shore via satellite. It can detect winds, currents, salinity of the water, water temperature, barometric pressures, all those kinds of things. They are powered by solar power or by wind. And again, they're really pretty economical, although they're very expensive to begin with. And they'll stay out to sea for 4 or 5 years, and then you bring them in for repair. But we do have a way of finding these buoys. And now let me just give you some idea of when you put them in. Again, if they're running around $250,000 to $500,000 each, you don't want to lose them. And if you put them into the ocean, knowing full well that within a few years you may have to go out and repair them, you want them to be in the same position that you put them in. So we have what we call hard hats. And if you look at these, they look like giant construction hats chained together. Inside these hard hats is a glass ball. The glass ball is a flotation device. You encase them in plastic, and it keeps the mooring string uptight, taut, if you will, off the sea bottom, and they're attached to weights. Here you see some of the weights. They weigh about a ton each. So here you're looking at about 2.5 tons of weights. You drop these into the ocean, you attach chains, and again, what you end up doing is having your buoy attached to the end, and the weights hold it in place in the ocean. So you can find them, we need to repair them. And this probably gives you, here's the hard hats in the ocean. And here you see a buoy at the top. Follow the line down. Here are the hard hats right here. Here are the weights in the bottom of the ocean. There's an acoustic release here. Because remember, you want to sometimes bring the entire buoy in. You hit the acoustic release. These hard hats will float up to the ocean, as you see in the photo on the left. You reel them in. The weights stay in the bottom. They're made of cast iron. They will, over a period of time, disintegrate, and we do not bring those back. They stay in the bottom of the ocean. You bring the hard hats in, you bring the buoy in. Take a look at the video here. So this gives you some idea of bringing those buoys in. Here we have, I'll call it the buoy shop for short. It really isn't called that, but it's the buoy shop at WHOI. On the side of the buoy, if you look really closely at the square on the right-hand side, it reads, "If found adrift, please return to Woodsole Oceanographic." I'm not quite sure how you do that, but if you find it adrift, find one of these on your beach, as I said, in Braintree, let us know and bring it back to Woodsole. Let me call your attention to this container on the board of back of this vessel, on the back of the Atlantis. And just think about this for a minute. If you are a scientist and you're going out to sea, and maybe Rachel will even respond to this. If you're going out to sea, your experiment may be scheduled for a month from now, and you're out in the open ocean. And I guess you could think, boy, that'd be really great to lounge around on the deck for a month and not do anything, and then wait for your time for your experiment to come up. But it doesn't really work that way. What you will do back on land is you will load a container like this with all your scientific gear that you need for your experiment. And we'll fly you and the container out to the nearest port of call. And that's how you're going to do your experiment. When you're all done your experiment, next time you go back to a port of call, we'll unload you and your container, and you go back home. So that's how the scientists work at Woodsole on these vessels on the long voyages. We have another thing that was discovered, another interesting scientific fact that was discovered by the scientists at Woodsole. It's called the ocean twilight zone. Pretty fascinating. The life in the twilight zone is really amazing to think that this is happening every day all around the world. Thousands of animals traveling to the surface to feed on plankton and then return to the deeper waters during the day. Just an amazing discovery. It was a $35 million grant called the Audacious Project, which is part of the TED initiative, which was given to Woodsole and some other institutions as well. We have something called DunkWorks, which is the WHOI Center for Marine Robotics. And fortunately, I happened to be in the DunkWorks building yesterday. And in the DunkWorks building, by the way, it's a play on Skunkworks from Lockheed Martin, DunkWorks, Skunkworks, which is the top secret facility at Lockheed Martin. What this center will do is try to develop a concept and take it to reality. Much of the work is done on 3D printers built with hydrogen resin and even metal now with the 3D printers. And they will develop and test new technology before being deployed. They will make models of seabeds, models of coral. The seabed models are fascinating. They're fairly good size. You really get a feel for the seabeds themselves and what they're like. And it's just really good technology at work, and a lot of good stuff is going on in DunkWorks. Again, here you have the gentleman modeling some of the materials made with the plastic resins. Well, that pretty much is the end of my program. Hopefully you've learned something about what goes on at Woods Hole. We're sailing into the future. We have new vessels, a new dock under construction. Well, will be under construction. And here we have our newest vessel, which is the Neil Armstrong, ordered by the Office of Naval Research. There is the sister vessel built at the same shipyard in the same port. One is called the Neil Armstrong, is the one located on the East Coast. The Sally Ride is located at the Scripps Institute on the West Coast. It has a range of almost 12,000 nautical miles. Really a fascinating vessel, acoustic navigation system, dual control propellers. And again, it's a beautiful vessel. We certainly hope that you can also come to Woods Hole in person. We do have tours in the summertime, Monday through Friday. 2 tours, one at 10:30 and one at 1:30. You can schedule a tour in person online. And if you're Woods Hole and you're fortunate and the ships are in, sometimes you even get a chance to tour one of the vessels, and hopefully marine biological laboratories and the Woods Hole Aquarium, and just walk around the beautiful village of Woods Hole. And it's about I'd say from Braintree, you're probably an hour out, depending on traffic. Got to watch that bridge on the weekends, though. But again, thank you very much for your attention. And there we are, Woods Hole Village again. Thank you. Thank you, and have a great evening.
Cool. Thank you, Paul. You can stop sharing.
So, Rachel, I want to know about you, what you did when you went down to the Alvin.
Yeah. So when I was a graduate student in 2003, and I was working for a lab that studied deep sea hydrothermal vents and cold seeps. And we were on the coast of North and South Carolina looking for new ecosystems where we thought there might be some, because we thought there might be sources of methane emanating from the seafloor. Turns out we didn't find it. We didn't find much. But we dove to about 2,800 meters. And one thing Paul didn't talk to you about is little mementos that we do. So this was the size of a regular styrofoam cup, and it is now about 1.5 inches tall. So we decorate them, and then we put them down with our equipment. And then this, because of the pressure of the ocean, it shrinks the styrofoam. So I have several of these as mementos from, and it is super cramped, and there is no bathroom. So you get yourself in, and 10 hours later, hopefully you make it for the full 10 hours before you get back on.
If not, bring those bottles, right? Because you're going to go in a bottle. That's about the only way you're going to go. Just remember, I know on the vessel itself, there's P before you go sign. I don't know if it's still there, but it was last time we looked at the Alvin. Pee before you go, because don't drink coffee. It's a long ways down, to be sure. Those cups are fascinating. When I do my tours in the summertime, I have 3 or 4 of those cups, and usually I have students or kids on the tour, and I'll give them the cup and they'll pass it around. They're always amazed how that cup gets so tiny. Or as I tell folks, the pressure, think of your thumbnail and put 3 SUVs on your thumbnail, and that's about the pressure you have per square inch on the exterior of the Alvin capsule, which is just truly amazing if you think about it. Then anyway.
Yeah.
So hopefully you got something out of that. You saw some of the activities we're doing at Woods Hole. There's some brand new buildings, Rachel. I think you'd love to see the new labs, the new Remus facility, the new Dunkworks facility, and some really new buildings on the Quissit campus. They're absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, some fascinating, very important ocean research going on. So for those of you that are interested in what you can do to support this kind of stuff, of course, become members. You can always become a member of WHOI and support them financially. You could do things like vote for political candidates and vote for issues related to ocean research, vote for people that support these causes. And of course, always think of ways that you can support conservation and sustainability. So conserve water wherever you can, make sure that the bright things go down the drain. It's typical sustainability measures that we always like to remember. Yeah. We have a question. I'm curious about WHOI's collections department. Are you able to talk about that, Paul?
We share a media center or a library, if you will, with MBL. We share their facility. That facility is, I believe, open to the public by appointment. So you certainly do some research at the media center, library area in Marine Biological Laboratories. We also have all of our coring samples on the Quissit campus, which totally amazed me. I mean, there are coring samples taken for the last, I think, 50 years of taking coring samples. And the coring samples, of course, give you a lot of information about climate change over the millennium, if you will. Mm-hmm. And that's really pretty fascinating too, to see that. If you go to our visitor center or discovery center, they will have coring samples on display. They will have samples of whale technology about how to avoid hitting whales in the ocean. There's a Titanic exhibit there. So that's another very interesting place to go if you're in the Woods Hole area. So all those things are there.
Great. I don't see any more questions coming in. Last chance to ask Paul any questions.
Can you speak to, excuse me, can you speak to any current research that's going on as it relates to climate change?
Interestingly enough, yesterday I had a tour of their new facility, and one of the things they're really working on is climate change in the Arctic and the glacier melting. And what they're trying to do there is determine how fast the glaciers are melting, what the impact will be on sea level rise as a result of that. And that's where I believe one of our vessels is now located in the Arctic. So again, a lot of work on that. They're doing a lot of work with disappearing corals around the world, coral reefs. And I was telling Rachel earlier, one of the things they're trying to do is inject vitamins into the corals, have them grow faster. I don't know if that's going to work. They're not sure either, but that's one of the things they're doing. It's sort of, I think it's a crazy thing, but they've got to try it anyway. How they're going to do it, they don't know yet, but they would like to do it with an autonomous vehicle injecting the vitamins into the corals. So that would be an interesting event, to say the least.
So it looks like we're all out of questions. So with that, I will thank our speaker very much for your time today. We greatly appreciate it. And remind you, if you're not already a member of Sustainable Braintree, we encourage you to visit our website, www.sustainablebraintree.org, and befriend us on social media and come to one of our future events. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Okay, and before you go, if you go to WHOI.edu on your, well, you do that, and you can also go to the YouTube websites. There's loads and loads of videos on WHOI and the scientific equipment. And if you go to WHOI.edu, you can also click on WHOI and see all the kinds of vessels and what's going on. So again, that's a great site for someone who's interested in what goes on at Woods Hole Oceanographic. So do that too.
Love to.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Bye now.